When is it time to move from one care setup to another? Living independently to moving in with a family member or a provider of some sort, to having providers come into that additional space to, no, we're going to have to go to another residential programming situation. And then even if you're in one residential programming situation, you go, no, this isn't working. We have to switch. We have to go to another one. Experiences. Let's just real quickly, what were your experiences in that ballpark?
Yeah.
Carolyn?
So my mom, when I started,
Your dad stayed at home the whole time.
my dad stayed at home.
The whole time,
and he
all
had
the way through.
support
Okay.
at home, and
So mom,
but I do think mom probably paid the price for that support.
Yep.
Relative to her own health. But when it came time for my mom, what I was noticing, as far as supportive needs go, is number one, she had Lewy body dementia, so her ability to move about was becoming pretty challenging, and so oftentimes we needed two people to move her, to get her up. Otherwise, when she was up,
she was fine. It was getting up and down.
It was getting up and down, and like it was really hard. Really hard.
Yeah.
And so that, and then the other piece, which I think was equally as important, was her social, my ability or our ability to meet her social needs.
Engaged
she was really social.
Yeah.
And, you know, I, for a while, was taking her and her friends out to lunch. I'd take them to the movies, or I'd drive them there, and I got her to do those things.
Yeah.
But as time went on and changes continued to occur,
in and out of the car.
Friends,
in and out of the car.
Friends fall off the face of the earth because they are having to navigate these abilities, these changing abilities, and they don't know what to do. So that piece was really, really a challenge. So in my mind, it was like, we're getting to that time and we need to start looking. And I just did my homework. I went and looked ahead of time. She actually drove that discussion a little bit earlier in her life, where she said, let's go look at some places, because I'm probably going to end up wanting to move into one of these at some point. Yeah. So I knew that
it was an option that she had thought about, at least.
Yep. So again, the straw that, or I don't know, the straw that broke the camel's back, or the ultimate decision ended up being made for us because of an event that she had.
Right. So she had another health event, and in that health event, she ended up in the hospital. And in the hospital, they said rehab. And rehab, then it was like, she's not going to be able to go back to the house on her own with just one helper. Right. And so,
and for a while, it was really positioned as a temporary, you know, mom, until, you know, right now, I mean, we need to focus on you getting
to a place
better, because moving about was really hard. Yeah. And so, but she became pretty immersed in that community.
And that world was small. Her world got smaller and smaller, and the amount of time she needed to do things was smaller and smaller. Right. And so, so
it turned out to be really,
it was a good choice.
A good choice.
And you had the resource to do that.
We did.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's switch over here. Let's come over to this end. And either for your grandma or your work experience, either one, when we think about switching places and finding that other place, what's some of the challenges in that? What are the points of change?
Yeah, so I can even piggyback on what Carolyn was saying. My grandmother was having issues with just emotionally recognizing that if she goes somewhere else, my father lived where we moved her to all the way on the other side of town, probably 40, 45 minutes from her social
From
life.
where she was.
Right, exactly. She was very involved in her church. My dad didn't necessarily go to her church, so she knew that moving over there with him, that social life was going to be gone. And then I have another perspective where, and it was just a short-term period, she was having some mobility issues, which is why we moved her with my dad anyway, because of the falls. But we had a family trip planned, big, you know, Disney thing with all the kids and grandkids for my dad, but my grandmother couldn't travel that long distance. And so to put her somewhere for respite for just the week, after she's already upset, and you vow you would never put me in a place. And so even though we're dropping her off for just a small period of time,
Doesn't feel that way.
It was extremely traumatic for us to drop her off for respite. And it was it wasn't even for a whole week. But she had a really hard time.
It was a very horrible reaction.
It was
for
a
her.
very horrible.
And it was hard for y'all.
Exactly. So I called her every day, and she seemed to settle down a little bit when she heard from me. But the drop off period was really, really traumatic.
Yeah. Ooh. And if you were going to do it over, what would you have changed?
To be honest,
How long after moving in with your dad was the trip to the big family trip scheduled?
it was probably a year or more.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a good period of time.
There was a
in
period of time
between.
for adjustment, but it still didn't,
feel good.
right because she still wasn't settled. Even after that year,
Sure.
she still felt the loss of her original home.
Right.
And then putting her in this, quote unquote, putting her in this
Putting
other place,
her.
because she did not agree to that placement.
Right.
She didn't agree that everybody should go to Florida except for her.
Exactly.
And was there ever a conversation, well, Grandma, if you came to Florida, it's miserable, it's hot, we're going to be out a lot. Would you really want to do that?
I think we did. And
What happened?
well, she did recognize that she didn't want to go to Florida either.
Okay.
So that wasn't her fight. She didn't
Okay.
say, I want to go with you guys.
Okay.
She just wanted to stay
In the house
home.
alone.
Correct, but it wasn't safe for her to do that. So to answer your other question, if I had the opportunity to do that differently, maybe have some respite come into the home and sit with her where she was.
Okay, so let her keep the place because the place was hard enough for the first challenge. And for her, place meant a lot.
Yes.
And so maybe letting her stay in the place and change the people out.
Yes.
Instead of your uncle being there, having other people be there.
Yes, exactly.
Because that was more what she was asking
That's
for.
what she was asking for.
Oh,
Yeah.
And in hindsight, you go, oh,
Yeah,
well, we could have
afterwards.
actually,
Yeah.
that could have been. So that's, I think, a piece that many people, when we say the 5 Ps, when we talk about place, people, props,
Mm-hmm.
programming, and other possibilities, looking back, rather than changing the place for her, which she made her miserable,
Right.
changing the people might have given her the thing she really wanted, which is stay where I want to stay.
Sure. And to add to that, even once we moved her in with my dad and my stepmother, we would still take her to her home. We never got rid of her home. And so we would take her there. We would have dinner with her at her own dining room. And she was so content. And so even if we had her stay
Helpers
there for
there.
a couple and had some helpers there for that
Yeah.
week while we were gone,
That may have been even
more
satisfying.
benefit. Exactly.
Yeah. So good insight into that. Royden, your dad stayed home
Mom and Dad
until
stayed home
until
the whole time.
the point of did he pass here?
Mom
Because we
actually
are
died
actually in your house.
Yeah, we are in my house. Mom
Yeah.
actually died in this house. Dad
Okay.
was at the hospital and scheduled to come home when he passed away.
Okay.
But we had caregivers.
With hospice support?
Hospice support.
With
yes.
hospice. So
Right.
that was the plan of action, but that just actually never even made it into existence. But that's how you were going to do
Right.
it.
Now, there were hospice people at the hospital, which helped us
Yeah.
with those decisions.
Choices.
We were set up for them to spend their last days here.
Yeah.
But but looking back on it, we, the 3 kids, tried to talk my parents into going to a continuing care
Retirement
community where they
With
could
lots of options
with lots
and
of
ways to
options.
progress. Mom
Right.
would be different than Dad, possibly.
Yeah, and Dad was a big social person. Mom was more, well, under his personality, it just is what was. But they wanted to stay here.
Okay.
And we had caregivers here. In retrospect, Dad would have been a lot better off in a more social environment. But he wanted to stay here, and so that's what we did. So we had caregivers when Mom and Dad were here during the day, and I lived close enough that if Mom fell out of the bed at night, unfortunately, I was close enough, I could come get her back in the bed.
There
So
you go.
you need to have that.
You did. Instead of using EMS or the
Right.
neighbor, they used you.
And
So,
that- yeah,
okay.
and that was
Yeah.
fine. And then when Mom died, Dad famously said, "Well, I guess we can get rid of these caregivers now." It's like, okay, Pops. That lasted about 4 hours.
And they were his social support network.
They were a social support network, and I would,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I would try to come by 2 or 3 nights a week, have dinner with them, and that's what we did. So that was his decision, and we honored that.
Yeah. And it worked out. You had the resources. He
we
had
had
the
the
resources to
resources.
make that possible.
Right. Yeah.
Martha, the decision to place was not really yours at that moment.
Right.
Because there was a crisis.
It was a crisis. You said you had a crisis, and it involved a hospitalization, and it
For physical reasons or for psychiatric, social reasons due to the dementia with an event that caused
Right.
her to feel unsafe or.
right.
Yeah.
So one of the side effects of dementia sometimes is psychosis. Psychosis can stand alone, and sometimes
Yeah.
it comes with dementia. So she became psychotic and thought she'd had a baby,
Okay.
and thought I was part of a group of people that killed her baby.
Okay. And, so
And when that
that's-
took over, she looked at me and screamed a scream that a mother would scream coming face to face with somebody.
the killer
It was-
of a
yeah.
child.
And
Yeah.
so it wasn't safe for me.
Right, it wasn't
she could
safe
get
for
a kitchen
you.
knife, or
Right.
she would get out of a moving car.
she didn't feel safe with you anymore.
We'd be fine, and then all of a sudden,
Boom, there it is
bam.
again. Yeah, here it is.
Right. So it ended up in a hospitalization.
Okay.
And it was going to take something big for me to turn loose.
And that's what it was.
Sometimes the good Lord's like, okay, well, watch this.
Here, I'll give it to
Okay,
you. This
I
will
get
help
it.
you out.
Right. So we made that
get it? Yeah.
transition, and it was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. But the people at the care facility were really good. They said, trust us. It may take some time, but she'll learn that this is her home. And she did.
She did.
Yeah.
And then
So-
there was a time when being in that care setting turned out no longer to be the right choice for Martha, given where she was with her dementia then.
Right. So it was a bigger facility, beds for 20, and I love that facility. In fact, I went back last week and just visited with some of the staff
Yeah.
that's still there. They did a good job, but it was big.
Yeah.
And during COVID,
Yeah.
it's a horrible time.
Yep.
You know, they shut things down, and
people were
Martha was used to me
isolated.
visiting
Yeah.
on a regular basis, and when I couldn't anymore, it turned bad. It resulted in another hospitalization.
Oh boy.
And we moved her back there, but I wasn't sure I'd be able to continue because of the COVID. You know,
Right.
you had to be essential, and
Yep. Yep.
somehow, for a while, I wasn't deemed essential.
To
So
her
I moved
well-being.
her to a smaller facility. So she now lives in a residential house with 3 other residents, and have 24-hour care. And it's she's been there 3 years now. So that's worked out really, really well.
That turned
for
out to
us.
be a place that Martha can live the rest of her life.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
And you
arguably,
can support her.
she could come home.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not the flight risk,
No.
and the psychosis is treated medically.
Right.
But that would
Would it
it's-
add to Martha's life?
No, it wouldn't. And one of the things I say is, it sounds kind of hard that I don't have to care for Martha anymore. I can just be with her.
Yeah.
So when I show up, I can just be with her. I don't have to change her clothes or help her eat. Or
You don't have to negotiate some of the
Right.
harder pieces of caring.
Right.
And you can be caring.
and I can be caring.
Yeah, you can
Right.
really be present for her when you're
Right.
present.
And that's my job now,
Yeah.
is to go and be with her and show her that she's loved.
Yeah. So in all these moves, they happened, and they happened relatively well. I think we wish that was the case for everyone. It isn't. But what you heard in your stories is ways to try to negotiate it so it is a better choice. And when it wasn't the best choice, thinking forward as what could be different. If I were to do it again, or if it were to happen in another situation, this is something I'd be thinking about that I hadn't thought about. So we encourage everyone to really take that moment, pause, and consider what's best for everyone involved when we're having to make a choice. And if there's family dissension, really work with somebody who can help you put the puzzle pieces together to come to a resolution that makes the most sense in the moment and at least give it a try.
Right.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.